Hare Krishna. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. I want to welcome everyone this morning to our Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class, which is being conducted by the Prabhupada Disciples Association. We're an organization based on studying the original unedited books of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. We're also focused on the understanding that Śrīla Prabhupada is our guru, Diksha Guru, Siksha Guru, and that he lives with us in his sound vibration, which in previous years with ISKCON, I was in the movement for 15 years. And the way we introduce people to Krishna consciousness was exactly that way, that Prabhupada was the guru. And even though none of us were personally present with Śrīla Prabhupada during his time with us in his Vapu incarnation, we lived on the basis of sound vibration, his sound vibration, the Vani incarnation of the Guru. And Prabhupada, by the magic of modern technology, is now very much available to all of us through the internet. This is the proper use of technology, and by taking advantage of this, you can be in association with the pure devotee every day if you have the tools. Even if you don't have the tools, excuse me, if you have the books, then that is also a direct connection with the founder of our movement. It's a extraordinary opportunity for all of us to become Krishna conscious by using these tools and by practicing Krishna consciousness every day in our life. And by doing that, there are three things that Prabhupada guaranteed success for. One is bite, very important part of our life, of course. If you don't eat, you can't survive. So survival is critical. And Prabhupada taught us how to offer our food to Krishna and then honor it as spiritual food, which is antiseptic and prophylactic. It prevents us from committing sins in the future by taking the prasadam, and it's antiseptic. It purifies us of the sinful activities that we have committed in the past, antiseptic and prophylactic. And then we have our classes, like this morning, we're going to be discussing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam with our guest lecturer, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. And along with that, there is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, which should be done every day. Yesterday, we read a section from Mukunda Goswami's book, Miracle on 2nd Avenue, where Prabhupada talked about the number of rounds one should chant. And it was at that particular pastime that he said to Mukunda, oh, you should chant 64 rounds, because in the Gaudiya Math they were chanting 64 rounds. And then he saw the concern on Prabhu's face, so he reduced it down to 32, and then there was some relief because everyone knows it takes time to chant your rounds. And he didn't think he could do it. And then Prabhupada reduced it to 16 rounds a day, which has become the standard in our Krishna Consciousness movement, that everyone should chant minimum 16 rounds a day in order to keep their consciousness at a pure level. I'm going to read, before we start the class, I'm going to read a conversation between Prabhupada and Brahmananda and another devotee that's not mentioned on this issue of chanting. There was a question about quality of chanting. There's been questions brought up in our group by previous members about love, so-called love of Godhead, that you first have to love God, then you can chant type of approach. And Prabhupada in this conversation really gives us an insight on how we as devotees should conduct ourselves when it comes to chanting our rounds. He's giving direct instruction in this morning walk. Devotee, when chanting our 16 rounds, we are not sure if these rounds are sincere. Prabhupada, you should be sure. So, devotee, how can we be sure? Prabhupada goes, there is beads. Brahmananda, no. He's saying that when we chant our rounds, how can we be sure that when we chant the round, that the round is perfect, an attentive round and sincere? Prabhupada, therefore it is Shastra. You must. So he's changing the direction of the response to you must. There is no question of understanding. Brahmananda, the quality of the chanting, he's asking, how can we make the quality the best? Therefore, it is Shastra, you must, Prabhupada says. There is no question of understanding. The quality of the chanting, I'm sorry here, it's just off my phone here. And it keeps on flipping. When the quality comes, there is no force. You will have a taste for chanting. You will desire at the time. Why 16 rounds? Why not 16,000 rounds? That is quality. That is quality, he repeats. It is by force. You'll not do it, therefore, at least 16 rounds. But when you come to the quality, you will feel yourself, why 16? Why not 16,000 rounds? That is quality automatically. Just like Haridas Thakur was doing. He would chant 300,000 names a day. He was not forced to do it. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he requested, now you were old enough, you can reduce. But he refused. No, up to the end of my life, I shall go on. That is quality. Have you got such tendency that you will go on chanting and nothing to do? That is quality. Now, you are forced to do. Where is the question of quality? What's that force? That's Prabhupada's order. It's a force. You commit to chanting 16 rounds. Then quality comes. That is given a chance so that one day you may come to the quality, not that you have come to the quality. Quality is different. A takshakti, a shakti, attachment, just like Rupa Goswami says that how shall I chant with one tongue? How shall I hear two ears? Had it been millions of tongues and trillions of ears, then I could enjoy it. This is quality. Quality is not so cheap. Maybe after many births. So Prabhupada's saying, as we can hear here, carry on chanting many, many births. Now, the time being, you go on following the rules and regulations. It's being done by force, by the order. Where is the quality? So you want to understand quality? This is the quality. Following the orders. You'll not be forced, but automatically you'll desire. That is quality. It comes by its own accord. I'm writing books. I'm not being forced by anyone. Everyone can do that. Why one does not do it? Why I get up at night, Prabhupada says, at 1 o'clock in the morning and do this job. Because I cannot do without it. How one will do it artificially. This is quality. Therefore, they, like my purports, the quality is shown by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahena Me. Oh, I do not see Govinda. The whole world is vacant. Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahena Me, he repeats. This is quality. Just like we have got practical example. One man's beloved has died and he is seeing the whole universe vacant. Is it vacant? So that is quality of love. So there's no formula of quality. It is to be understood by himself. Just like if after eating something you feel refreshed and get strength, that is quality. You haven't got to take certificate. Will you give me a certificate that I've eaten? You'll understand whether eaten or not. That is quality. When you feel so much ecstasy in chanting Hare Krishna, that is quality, not artificially. Chant, chant. Otherwise, get out. This is not quality. This is an expectation that someday you may come to quality. That requires time. That requires sincerity. But quality is there. Shravanadi Sudha Chitte Karye. It will be awakened, not by force, just like love between two persons. It cannot be forced. You must love him. You must love her. Oh, that is not love. That is not love. When automatically you love one another, that is quality. Dora Veda, Prema. And there formally, at least in the Indian society, at an early age, they were married. There is no quality in that quality, but gradually remaining together, the quality of love increases. Then the wife takes care of the husband and the husband takes care of the wife. They become bound up, united in love. That is quality. In the beginning, when the child knows about love, what the child knows about love? No, he doesn't. But they are allowed to remain as husband and wife. They are thinking that I've got my husband, I've got my wife. And as the age increases, the dealings become intimate. Then they become affectionate. That is quality, not in the beginning. There is any quality. It is by the parents' arrangement. It's a morning walk on November 2nd, 1975 in Nairobi. So here we're getting an understanding that Prabhupada said, you chant your rounds, 16 rounds a day. Okay, we're going to carry on with the kirtan of Jayarada, or the bhajan of Jayarada Madhava. That was a bit long, that reading, but I thought it was very important for us to see what Prabhupada is talking about when he says that this is how you make advancement. It's by force. Do your rounds, 16 minimum. Vinkat, please.
Sai. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda-nandana Braja Jana Yashoda-nandana Braja Jana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda-nandana Braja Yashoda-nandana Braja Yashoda-nandana Braja Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari Jayam Swasaram Shukrisla Jagacharya Siddhar Sadasyaman Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Jai Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sam Kund Radha Kund Giridham ki Jai Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Navadvip Dham ki Jai Swami Bhaktivinoda ki Jai Ganga Mai ki Jai Jamuna Mai ki Jai Tulasi Devi ki Jai Bhakti Devi ki Jai Swami Bhaktivinoda ki Jai All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Narayanam
Ayanam
Namaskritya.
Namaskritya
Naram Cheva Narottamam.
Naram
Naram Cheva
Chaive
Narottamam.
Narotamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Devim Saraswatim
Saraswatam
Vyasam.
Vyasam
Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Tato Jayam
Udayam
Mudirayet.
Ayat
one should utter the means of conquest, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, after offering respectful obeisances, 1, to the personality of Godhead Narayana, 2, to the Narayana Rishi, who is the supermost human being, 3, to the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, then 4, to Śrīla Vyasadeva, the author. Before we beginning the reading and discussion on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, I wanted to read a verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number 7. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Ashuveragyam Jnanam Chayadahetukam. By the process of applying devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, the immediate result is that causeless knowledge and detachment follow. Next text, text number 8. Dharma swanushtita pumsam vishvakshena katah suya nautpadayad yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. Occupational activities according to one's own position executed by the humankind turns into useless labor only if such activities do not promote attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. Today we'll be reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. This is from the original 1962 version, published by Śrīla Prabhupāda in New Delhi, India. We are reading from Canto 1, Chapter 1, text number 18. All synonyms, translation, and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. We're reading from page 116. Ata akyahi harer diman avatara kata shubha lila vidadata sfera ishvarasya atma maya. Ata, therefore, akyahi, describe, harer, of the Lord, diman, all the sagacious, avatara, incarnations, kata, narratives, shubha, auspicious, lila, adventures, vidadata, perform, svaram, pastime, ishvarasya, the supreme controllers, atma, personal, maya, energies. Translation by Śrīla Prabhupāda. Therefore, O the sagacious Sutta Goswami, please narrate the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Controller, God's heads, multi-incarnations, which are auspicious adventures and pastimes executed by His internal potencies. Purport by His Divine Grace, Śrīla Prabhupāda. For creation, maintenance, and destruction of the manifested worlds, the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead, appears Himself in many thousands forms of incarnations, and the specific acts and adventures performed in those transcendental forms are all auspicious. Fortunate persons who happen to see them personally during performance of the Lord's activities, as well as those who hear those transcendental narrations, both are benefited by such pastimes. Text number 19, page 117. Vayam tuna vitripyama uttama shloka vikrame yashrinvatam rasajnanam svadu svadu pade pade vayam we to but na not vitripyama shall be in rest. Uttama shloka, the personality of Godhead who is glorified by transcendental prayers. Vikrame, adventures. Yat, which. Shrinvatam, by continuous hearing. Rasa, humor. Jananam, those who are conversant with. Svadu, relishing. Svadu, palatable. Pade, pade, in every step. Translation by Śrīla Prabhupāda. We shall never be in rest, even though continuously hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by good prayers. Those who have developed the particular humor of transcendental mellow do relish in every step such description of pastimes of the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupāda. That is the difference between mundane stories, fiction or history, and transcendental pastimes of the Lord. It is for this reason only that the old history of the whole universe is inculcated with references to the pastimes of the incarnations of Godhead. Ramayana, Mahabharata, or the Puranas are histories of the bygone ages recorded in connection with the pastimes of the incarnation of the Lord, so that the reading matter would remain ever fresh, even by repeated and repeated readings. For example, let us take the matter of the Bhagavad Gita or that of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Anyone may go on reading these transcendental books repeatedly for the whole life, and still he will find in them new light of information. Mundane news are static, whereas the transcendental news are dynamic, as much as the spirit is dynamic, whereas the matter is static. And those who have developed the humor for understanding the transcendental subject matter shall never become tired of hearing such narrations. One is satiated by mundane activities, and nobody is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. Uttama shloka means the literature which is not meant for the nescience. Mundane literature are tamas, or in the modes of darkness, of ignorance, whereas the transcendental literatures are different from them. They're above such modes of darkness, and the light is more and more illuminated in course of progressive reading and realization of transcendental subject matter. The so-called liberated persons are never satisfied by repetition of the word Aham Brahmasmi. Such artificial realization of Brahma becomes acnide, and thus for relishing real humor, they turn to the narrations of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And those who are not so much fortunate, they turn to worldly matters of philanthropy and altruism. This means the Mayavad philosophy is mundane, whereas the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita and that of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam are transcendental. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Miritam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaum Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Bhaktisiddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhagavad Vandanam Kadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sharkara Yuktam Kadatihi Visheshataham Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I offer my respectful obeisances, our respectful obeisances, to Śrīla Prabhupada, our spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, has opened our eyes from the darkness of ignorance with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. Before we start the discussion, I want to thank very much Bhaktivedanta for pointing out that I mispronounced the word acnide or acnade, whichever way it was. My first language, my mother tongue is not English, it's French. So kindly forgive me for the mispronunciation. So these texts are very important. It deals with the incarnations of Godhead. As anybody know, the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, Lord Krishna describes how he appears in the world and why he appears. There was a very interesting conversation with His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupāda in Los Angeles, California on December 2nd, 1968. December 2nd, 1968. This is in connection with the Bhagavad Gita lecture on chapter 7, text 1. Madhudvisa, Prabhupada, what is the difference between an incarnation and an avatar? Prabhupada, avatar is incarnation. Avatar means incarnation. Incarnation in your dictionary is accepting somebody. Is that? But avatar, of course, there are different grades of avatar. Avatar means one who comes. The real world is avatarana, descending. Avatar means one who comes from a higher sphere, higher planet. They're not living entities of this world, this material world. They come from spiritual world. They are called avatar. So these avatar grades are different. There are Shakti Avatar, Guna Avatar, Lila Avatar, Yuga Avatar, so many. So avatar means one who comes directly from the spiritual world. An incarnation, of course, this avatar is translated with the word incarnation. But I think real meaning of incarnation means who accepts a body, is it not? So that incarnation, everybody accepts a material body. But avatar, there are avatars of Vishnu and avatar of devotees also. There are different grades of avatar. You'll read it in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is coming out. Yes. Jaya Gopala. In chapter 4 in the Bhagavad Gita as it is said that Arjuna was present at the speaking of Bhagavad Gita to the sun god so many years ago. What position did he have there? Prabhupada, he was also present, but he has forgotten. Jai Gopal, which position did he have? If it wasn't spoken at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which position? Prabhupada, Arjuna was put in that position by the supreme will of the Lord. Unless, just like in the theatrical stage, both the father and the son, they're playing some part. but actually they're playing as such. Similarly, Arjuna is eternal friend of Krishna. He cannot be in delusion. How can he be delusion if Krishna is his constant friend? But he was supposed to be in delusion so that he played the part of a conditioned soul, and Krishna explained the whole thing. He played that ordinary person. Therefore, all his questions was just like ordinary man, unless because of the teachings of Gita was lost. That is explained. So Krishna wanted to deliver again the yoga system of Gita. So somebody must ask, just like you're asking, I'm answering. Similarly, Arjuna, although he was not to be supposed in illusion, he placed himself as representative of this conditioned soul, and he inquired so many things, the answers were given by the Lord. So this is an important point, because sometimes persons with profound of knowledge will claim that their alleged status of divine realization or that their mistakes, they will accuse Arjuna of forgetting Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This is a nonsense misinterpretation under the influence of the illusory energy. Prabhupada explains very clearly here what is Arjuna's position and what is Lord Krishna's position. He says they're eternal associates. So how did he forget? He was put into that delusion so that he could receive the Bhagavad Gita. It is not very complicated to understand. Now, in our Gaudiya disciplic succession, one of our great acharyas, Sanatana Goswami, has written a book called Laghu Bhagavatamrita. This particular book was written upon the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it is an elaborate, detailed description of all the different kind of avatars, incarnations, their position, their names, the different scriptures, so many details, very great detail. Jiva Goswami has also given all these details in the Krishna Sandarbha. And we see that Śrīla Prabhupāda has also given in the English language so many nice description of what the avatars and what is their real purpose. Now, some other persons were not too bright, or some so-called motivational speakers, they sometimes say that the Bhagavad Gita is not a religious book. I've seen somebody from Bombay, some alleged motivational speaker, and somebody asked him a question, whether the Bhagavad Gita is a religious book. And he said, no, it's not a religious book. Well, we beg to differ. Anybody who has read Bhagavad Gita in the chapter 4 can see it is explained, because the question will come, well, if there's an avatar, what do they come for? What are they doing? Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttana madharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma samstaparartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. The word is given directly there, dharma samstapanartaya. So these so-called motivational speakers should carefully read the text as given by His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupāda before making public comment that makes everything look foolish. It is a transcendental book of religion. It's also a book of culture. It's a book of education. It's a book of transcendental knowledge, which explains what is the reason for the avatar, the descent of Lord Krishna. We see in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that Prabhupada explains here in text number 18, the last sentence. Prabhupada explains, fortunate persons who happen to see them personally, to see these different avatars, Fortunate persons who happen to see them personally during performance of the Lord's activities, as well as those who hear those transcendental narrations, both are benefited by such pastime. So the point is, even if one has not been there directly during the manifested presence of the Lord's activities 5,000 years ago, one can still be benefited by such activities, by hearing, submissive hearing of such activities from proper sources. We see in the next text that the various rishis are telling, in Naimisharanya, are telling Sutta Goswami, svadu svadu pade pade, that to hear these transcendental pastimes is relishable in every step. Why is it relishable? Prabhupada explains, because these transcendental literatures, mundane literature, are tamas, or in the modes of darkness, of ignorance, whereas the transcendental literatures are different from them. They're above such mode of darkness, and the light is more and more illuminated in course of progressive reading and realization of transcendental subject matter. So this is a very important point, because we have no such thing as impersonal philosophy in Krishna consciousness. The Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada explains, let us take the matter of the Bhagavad Gita or that of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Anyone may go on reading these transcendental books repeatedly for the whole life, and still he will find in them new light of information. I think we've discussed before several times how Śrīla Prabhupada has made so many different commentaries upon these various topics discussed in all these different verses. There are different books that have been published called Collected Teachings on Bhagavad Gita, Collected Teachings on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. There are numerous conversations with His Divine Grace where he gives supplemental explanation and various explanation from so many different angles of vision. There's no need for anyone to go to some so-called outside advisors, some self-made outside advisors who tend to mislead others. Just like last week, we read in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 42, in the last two sentences of that purport, our Śrīla Prabhupada warns that one should be aware of various individuals who mislead others. This is a very important point. I'm going to read that text again and explain why this warning is so critical. Because what we see presently is so many persons who are presenting themselves as authorities in spiritual life and misrepresent the teachings of the Acharya, Śrīla Prabhupada. This is from page number 268 in Bhagavad Gita as it is, the non-adulterated version in chapter 4, text 42. Prabhupada says, one should therefore follow the path of Bhagavad Gita as it is expressed in the Gita itself, and beware of self-interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path. The Lord is definitely the supreme person, and his activities are transcendental. One who understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his study of the Gita. Now, this is quite significant because we've all seen various practitioners and various individuals who claim to be following Śrīla Prabhupada, the great Acharya, the current Acharya of the Krishna Consciousness movement, who boldly and occasionally stupidly declare that Prabhupada is dead and gone. They even had the audacity to file in the United States Copyright Office that Prabhupada was just a worker for hire, that the great Acharya, the Sampradaya-Ācārya was their worker for their corporation. This is simply nonsense. It shows the stupidity and the lack of intelligence and the lack of connection with the bona fide Acharya. We have seen this repeatedly, this minimization and mischaracterization of Śrīla Prabhupāda's teachings. This is a very dangerous trend. As a devotee, it's very important that devotees have to develop the intelligence and the discrimination to see things as it is. Even in regular dealings with other devotees, one should not misrepresent and distort and mischaracterize what other devotees say or what other devotees write. This is offensive. If one does not understand something, if one does not comprehend something that the devotee has said or written, it can be respectfully inquired, what does that really mean? But one should not purposely distort and invent and manufacture interpretations. That is a very dangerous trend which we have seen. Devotees should be honest and simple. One should not manufacture facts for somebody's convenience, for political reasons. That is nonsense. We see in the Bhagavatam, everything, every sentence in these purports is Śrīla Prabhupāda's realization of the meaning of the text. We have often explained how Śrīla Prabhupada used to translate these books. Several times I had the opportunity to watch Śrīla Prabhupada translate the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. There was a very large book with all the commentaries of 18 or 20 commentaries of the Acharyas. It's a very thick book in Sanskrit. And this book is a very technical language, very technical Sanskrit language. To learn the Sanskrit language properly takes 12 years, 10 hours a day. Śrīla Prabhupada was a very accomplished, learned Sanskrit scholars and Bengali scholars. But more than that, more than the technical literary proficiency, he was a pure devotee who had direct realization from Krishna. So we read these purports. This is Lord Krishna speaking through Śrīla Prabhupada. I've told this story one time, how a devotee asked Śrīla Prabhupada, the spiritual master, when he closes his eyes, what does he see? And Prabhupada rebuked the devotee and says, that you do not need to ask. So the devotee asked, well, Śrīla Prabhupada, the pure devotee, when he closes his eyes, what does he see? Prabhupada said, oh, that is a good question. The pure devotee, when he closes his eyes, he sees the pastimes of Radha Krishna manifest in his heart 24 hours a day. So this is the difference between the fully realized topmost Mahabhagavat and the neophytes, whether it be a Kanishta neophyte or a Madhyam neophyte. There is a difference. It is not the same. And one should be respectful of His Divine Grace's revelations and His transcendental literatures. This should be approached with the utmost reverence and respect. Hare Krishna. Vishwakarma.
Thank you, Prabhu, very much for that enlivening discussion on the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And I wanted to, Vinkat, go back to the purport where Prabhupada speaks about mundane news. It's in the middle of the purport. Anyone may go on reading these transcendental books repeatedly for the whole life, and still he would find in them new light of information. I think all of us have experienced that you can continue to read. One of our bhaktas here in Hamilton has read the Gita 20 times. And every time he reads the Gita, he tells me he gets an ever fresh understanding of the philosophy, and I think that goes for all of us. Further, mundane news, are static, whereas the transcendental news are dynamic as much as the spirit is dynamic, whereas the matter is static. And those who have developed the humor for understanding the transcendental subject matter shall never become tired of hearing such instructions. One is satiated by mundane activities, and no body is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. So this is called the law of satiation, and exists in the material world. For example, in terms, Prabhupada uses the example of the mundane newspaper. What you do with the mundane newspaper is you read it, and then you deposit it in the garbage. And this is the value of that literature. Whereas the transcendental pastimes of Krishna are alive. They live. This is the bhakti yoga process, that it is alive with the Shakti, the transcendental Shakti of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotee. Vinkat, I want you to go to the Bhagavad Gita, text 6, chapter 4. We're going to read a couple of verses from there, just to, and then culminate in a very profound verse which explains how one can get out of the material world. So text 6. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all sentient beings, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Text number 7. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Text 8. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. And here we have this key verse that Prabhupada commonly repeated in his lectures. Janma karma cheme divyam evam yo vetitattvataha chaktva deham punarjanma naitimam etisor juna. One who knows, translation, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So this is the key to getting out of the material world, is to simply have this understanding. So we'll go down to Eko Devo Nitya Lila Nurak Bhakta Vyapi Hriday Antaratma. The one Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally engaged in many, many transcendental forms in relationships with his unalloyed devotees. This Vedic version is confirmed in this verse of the Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculations, attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. Simply by accepting the truth on faith, one can, without doubt, attain liberation. The Vedic version, Tattvamasi, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Krishna to be the Supreme, or who says unto the Lord, you are the Supreme Brahman, the Personality of Godhead, is certainly liberated instantly. and consequently his entrance into the Transcendental Association of the Lord is guaranteed. In other words, such a faithful devotee of the Lord attains perfection, and this is confirmed by the following Vedic assertion. Tam eva vidit vati miti manya panta vidyate ayanaya. One can attain the perfection of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no alternative, because anyone who does not understand Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is surely in the mode of ignorance. Consequently, he will not attain salvation simply, so to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey, or by interpreting the Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. Such empiric philosophers may assume very important roles in the material world, but they are not necessarily eligible for liberation. Such puffed up mundane scholars have to wait for the causeless mercy of the devotee of the Lord. One should therefore cultivate Krishna consciousness with faith and knowledge, in this way attain perfection. So these particular verses are key. In India, in the schools, the children, they learn these verses. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya taduskratam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. This, in order to, the reason why Krishna comes is to deliver the conditioned soul, and he does it through the process of Krishna consciousness. This is achieved through constant chanting. In other words, if you're not a devotee of Krishna, you cannot understand who Krishna is. Devotee means someone who practices the process of Krishna consciousness by chanting the holy names, as we discussed earlier in the class, by studying the literature given by the pure devotee, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and by taking Bhagavat Prasadam. Yaśodā-nanda, could you please comment?
Yeah, I think this is a very important point to discuss, because when we read this text number 9, Prabhupada says, he who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculations, attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. Now, various practitioners of spiritual life, the jnanis, the yogis, they engage in many of them in severe austerities, many years of study. But here we see that simply by accepting the truth of the transcendental nature of the appearance of Lord Krishna, one attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. So this is a very revealing sentence from Śrīla Prabhupāda. This is the greatest benefit of hearing from a pure devotee. I gave that example earlier, some upstart neophyte presenting some so-called motivational speaking, was speaking simply nonsense on a TV channel, claiming that the Bhagavad Gita is not a religious book. Now, Śrīla Prabhupada many times explained that Bhagavad Gita is a book of culture, a book of knowledge, a book of practical science. Yes, there's so many different angles that Prabhupada presented. But when somebody preaches in public, you should present Prabhupada's presentation, not their own nonsensical interpretations. This is very damaging to the reputation of the Krishna consciousness movement, with upstarts and neophytes and motivated people who try to speak as big learned speakers and who show their utter ignorance. One should stick to the Acharya. Mahajano yena gatasa panta. One should follow in the path of the great authorities and the great Acharyas, the great transcendental teachers. Questions, remarks? Hare Krishna.
Goramani Das in Mayapur.
Oh,
Please.
come ba.
Please render please render your question or realization.
Oh, Prabhu, I have a lot of things to hear more and more, because yes, I can see that so many things are changing, I mean, they are partially following Śrīla Prabhupāda instructions, but every day something new is introduced in the activity of the movement. That should be only book distribution, prasada distribution, and Harinama Sankirtana. That's what Prabhupada wrote for us. But I saw, for example, last thing, discover the shaman that is in you, and this is this is a cultural center in Italy that should be preaching Krishna consciousness, but the deviation is so. I don't know what to say. I'm having great pleasure to hear you at the moment.
Well, what we are hearing
Yes.
is basically we're spending our time hearing from Śrīla Prabhupada. And those people that misrepresent Prabhupada by promoting these adulterated books, by promoting these unauthorized changed books, they're not representing the disciplic succession. They're not representing the parampara. They're from a broken branch of the tree of Lord Chaitanya, a dried up branch. And this offensive activity of distorting the teaching by polluting the text that Prabhupada has written with their own nonsensical grammatical embellishing program under the guise of editing, this is not acceptable. Devotees should see through it. When they change the book, they're changing the teachings. We've seen this, what they've done with Bhagavad Gita. We've seen this, what they've done with Chaitanya Charitamrita, when they deleted the sentence that Prabhupada wrote, that Bhaktivedanta Thakur, that Jagannath Das Babaji initiated Bhaktivedanta Thakur. They had the audacity to change Prabhupada's words for their own political motivation, for their own political monopoly. Very dangerous. One should not hear from such nonsensical misinterpreters. We just read in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 42. One should be aware of such persons who mislead others. Hare Krishna.
Yes, absolutely. We want to request Bala Ganesh Prabhu to put forward a question. Thank you. Bala Ganesh, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhu, it was mentioned in the purport by Śrīla Prabhupada that even after repeated readings, so still it will remain fresh. In this connection, Prabhu, can we also refer to the previous Acharya's purports along with Śrīla Prabhupada's purports to understand different angle of vision for that pastimes of the Lord, Prabhu?
What acharyas are you referring to?
Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Baladev Vidyabhushan, the purports of other Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas regarding the Bhagavatam purports, just to understand the multiple angles of vision from various Acharyas,
Prabhu. I'm going to make a quick comment and I'll ask Yaśodā-nandana to speak. Prabhupada recommended that we study exclusively his books because he has summarized the conclusions of all these acharyas and put them in a simple format for us in his books. There are some people that think that Prabhupada did not present the highest knowledge of Krishna consciousness in his literatures. This is because they have not really studied the books themselves. This is the problem. Because when you actually enter into the intensive study of the books, especially Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll see that the understanding of Krishna consciousness that Prabhupada gives in his translation is of the highest level possible in the universe. There's nothing beyond, because he is a pure devotee, he's able to convey the true understanding of the relationship between the devotees of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Chaitanya himself. It sets a standard of understanding that is beyond any other Acharya recorded in history. So my point is, just stay fixed on reading Prabhupada's books. That's the best thing. Try to assimilate them, all of the different details in the books, into your preaching methods. It's unlimited. And in this way, you'll be able to achieve perfection. This is the system. Yaśodā-nandana, please.
Yeah, this is very important because there are numerous discussions that Prabhupada had where Śrīla Prabhupada was answering questions when his disciples were asking him whether they can read the books of the previous acharyas. Now, one time Prabhupada said, I've never said that people should not read the books of the previous acharyas, but then Prabhupada said, first you should read these books. First you should study these books that he has written. In 1972, we used to visit the son of Bhaktivedanta Thakur in India, in Birnagar, India, the birthplace of Bhaktivedanta Thakur. And what happened is that Prabhupada had passed we did not know this, Prabhupada had passed an order that people should no longer go there to visit. So when we got the letter, Prabhupada wrote us a letter that there's no need whatsoever for outside instruction. Whatever is to be learned of the teachings of Bhaktivedanta Thakur can be learned from our books. Now, because right now, it's important to understand there's the books, there's the collected the lectures of Śrīla Prabhupāda on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, there's the collected lectures of Śrīla Prabhupāda on Bhagavad Gita, there's 6,000 or 7,000 letters, there's numerous conversation, 37 volumes of conversations, and every day the Bhaktivedanta archives with Ekanath are trying to bring out new, fresh material that you discover. So it's important to study that first. Not that somebody should jump over to some dubious translations that have been made and then say, well, now we've got a higher teaching. No, it is an insult to Śrīla Prabhupada to think that he only taught the basics and somebody else is going to teach the higher teaching. That is not respectful. Very dangerous. Hare Krishna.
Anandabai, Devi Dasi, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. It's a very nice class. I just wanted to talk a little bit more on what my husband and I call the pop psychology movement going on. And we've seen these videos. They come out very regularly, like almost every day, where ISKCON devotees who are big charismatic type devotees in their communities, one from Silicon Valley and two from Chowpatty. They have millions of followers, which equals millions of dollars. And they have a new language. Chant is replaced by meditation. Ashram or temple is replaced by monastery. And Krishna is replaced by higher power. So they water down things to get masses of people to come and listen to their pop psychology, which immediately starts making people feel better about themselves. You know, it's meant to increase your good feelings about yourself, which somehow, I guess, also helps increase your ego. And so it's kind of opposite of what the Prabhupada's movement is trying to do, where you're trying to not tell you that you have just a higher power, but who that higher power is. And so this is very, it's just very backwards, because here you have somebody, a devotee that's got millions of people following him, and the perfect opportunity to say Krishna, perfect opportunity to say chant japa, here's how you do it, perfect opportunity to say go to the temple and see the forms of the Lord. But instead, they're just leading these people nowhere. Where are these people going to go? They're just going to try and feel good about themselves, and that's it. It's such a waste. I mean, the only thing that I can see is happening is that these charismatic devotees are making millions of dollars, and that is just what they're doing. Hare Krishna.
I guess, thank you for your comment, Mataji, and this is a very important point. I guess my question is to all these motivational speakers in this new age kind of talk is, where are they going with this? In other words, Prabhupada presented things in a certain way. He preached in a certain way. He wanted his devotees to learn to preach, to present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness based on his approach, on his books, on his example. So, but now what we have, things are being compromised more and more and more. I've often discussed in these classes a very dangerous trend, a Sahaja trend that is going on in that organization of people manufacturing new mantras. Now, during Prabhupada's manufactured presence, this would have not been allowed. This would have immediately been called on and challenged and stopped by His Divine Grace. But now we see people inventing mantras with all kinds of crazy ways of gypsy dancing and everything, and it goes on and nobody says anything. So now we have this new age type terminology, various concocted terms that were not used by Śrīla Prabhupada. Why? Because they've lost that connection. They've lost that preaching spirit. They've lost that fundamental approach of being respectful and faithful to the Acharya. So therefore, they're wandering with all these different terminologies, with all these different approaches, and it's not working. It doesn't matter how many millions of people are listening to it. This is not the standard. This is not the standard. And one cannot rationalize, well, we have to adjust according to time, place, and circumstances and this and that. No, no, no. We just have to present what Prabhupada has given. That's all we have to do. This is what Prabhupada has taught us. Simple. What do you think? You think it's a good approach to follow Prabhupada?
Vishwakarma.
Yes. We'll go to the other. There are people with their hands up, and we do want to apologize. Sometimes we may not see a person's hand on the screen, and it's not a personal rejection of anyone. It's just circumstantial. You know, it's a technology thing. But in regards to what you made a comment, I think it's important for us to see because, as you know, I'm quite active as well in social media. So I do see all of these motivational speakers. I take time to listen to them speak. We're basically studying what they do. But when you see someone like this Vaisheshika in Silicon Valley give his motivational talk, he's like an Anthony Robbins. He's become like a Joel Osteen. That's like Charu he's like the ISKCON form of Joel Osteen. If you've watched that Christian preacher, he has a certain approach to motivate his group of followers, and he has tens of millions of followers too. He lives in a $10 million house. So this is, for us, what we're seeing is it's revealing to us exactly why we're not part of that mission, right? Because we don't want to be a part of a Sahaja group. This came about through largely through a movement started by Devamrita originally from New Vrindavan. And he created this Vyas Puja offering in 2002. You can look it up online, where he coined the phrase post-Prabhupada books. Post-Prabhupada books. In other words, he was introducing this concept that's followed by another fellow up in Canada here, Bhakti Marg Swami. These different people, they felt that Prabhupada did not present the philosophy properly for the modern age. So they decided, oh, well, we'll change it. Like, we don't like to say, like Bhakti Marg Swami would say, oh, I don't like it when Prabhupada said the 4 regulated principles, no illicit sex life. That's a basic principle of our philosophy. No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, and no illicit sex life. It's not a dirty word. It's not slang. These are the regulated principles. But somehow or other, they water it down. And when you start to water it down, people that are looking for the truth will not be attracted to it. But there will be lots of followers, just like Sadhgurus. Sadhguru is a motivational speaker. He doesn't speak with any authority like Prabhupada in terms of Shastra. Prabhupada is like a transcendental lawyer. Like he'll speak something and then he'll quote the Shastra. It's absolutely his methodology for preaching is spectacular. Like for me, I've always been a fan of great speakers. I love to hear people speak. But I've never heard anyone in my life speak with such brilliance like Śrīla Prabhupāda. So why would you want to imitate someone else, or why would you want to concoct a system for preaching when you've got the perfect example of that in your guru, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda? This is their bewilderment, mother. They are bewildered by false prestige. They're bewildered by corporate expansion. They're bewildered by the acquisition of money. For example, all these leaders have millions of dollars in their bank accounts that they're collecting from their followers. Does it mean they're successful? Materially, yes, but spiritually, no. This is not our philosophy. This is not the way to conduct ourselves according to Prabhupada's teachings. And just finally, what we're supposed to do as disciples is follow in the footsteps of the pure devotee. If you understand that, that means he makes a print, you make the same print. Now, Prabhupada would like us to speak from our own realizations, but we basically stay right behind him and repeat what he says and do what he practiced to demonstrate how to go back home, back to Godhead. This material world is an illusion, and these people are caught up in this illusory activity. We'll go to Vinkat and then to Bhaktaran. Vinkat Prabhu, Haribol.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to share this one quote I found by Prabhupada about reading books, going back to Bal Ganesh Prabhu's question.
Yes.
So Śrīla Prabhupada says, so if you want to understand Bhagavad Gita, then we must understand in the same way as the person who directly heard from. This is called parampara system. Suppose I have heard something from my spiritual master, so I speak to you the same thing. So this is parampara system. You cannot imagine what my spiritual master has said. Or even if you read some books, you cannot understand unless you understand it from me. So, and then there was another comment by Balganesh Prabhu asking, in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Verse 1, Śrīla Prabhupada mentions that serious students of the Bhagavatam can study some other commentaries and all that. So I did find that even in the 1965 version of the book. So I would just my understanding is, that Prabhupada wrote that in 1965 before there were any books or anything. But in 1973, this is what he's saying, that you cannot understand anything unless you understand it from me. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yes, that's a good point. And really, we have to use common sense in dealing with the matters of how to become Krishna conscious. But in essence, what Prabhupada is telling, and our experience directly with Prabhupada, is that he was telling us specifically, just stay focused on my books. Just stay focused on them. He's speaking as a scholar. He's speaking to the world community, but specifically to his disciples. He told us these specific instructions so that we wouldn't become confused by all kinds of philosophy. Won't become confused. Use your common sense. That's what a lot of devotees do not have. They don't have common sense. They had no association with Prabhupada. They never saw him conducting the management of his society. But, for example, I'll give a quick example. We went to Sridhar Swami's ashram in, I think it was 1974. Now, when we got there, it was quite exciting. They were chanting all these mantras and conducting Krishna consciousness in their particular, system. And we were told that we were allowed to go to Sridhar Swami's ashram by Bhavananda. He said he had got permission. Now, I found out the other day from Balaram in Australia that when we came back from Sridhar Swami's ashram, Prabhupada was furious that we went. Furious. Because he understood what was happening between himself and his godbrothers. He understood it, and he knew they were envious of him, very envious. Nobody should be confused about this matter. I have a personal letter from him that told me specifically, do not associate with my godbrothers. He could do it, but we were told don't do it because of the pollution and the contamination that can be infiltrated into our movement. And it was infiltrated into our movement when the devotees who were in so-called leadership position after Prabhupada's demise went to see Sridhar Swami, and he introduced this bogus elected guru system into our movement. It came from him. So, Ron Singh, please.
Okay, so we were discussing about the mass following of these so-called appointed criminal gurus. We see in Śrīla Prabhupāda's book, the Bhagavad Gita as it is. If Venkat Prabhu can go to the preface of the 1972 Bhagavad Gita, and I'd like to come to the last statement that Śrīla Prabhupada makes. Let's see if it's on the screen.
No sound.
Your microphone's off, my friend.
Okay. We see. Okay, let's go to the last statement. Here, Śrīla Prabhupada says in the last statement, we hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success. So if we really understand this statement here, Śrīla Prabhupada is saying that we're distributing so many books, getting so much following, but even if one person becomes a pure devotee, we would consider our mission a success. So is he expecting all these millions and billions of people to become devotees? If you really think about it, what is he saying? They might have so much followers, they might have so much following, but are they becoming purified? And are they coming to the stage of becoming a pure devotee? I don't think so. So this following and lots of money, these things are very insignificant because it creates an obstacle on the path of devotional service. And we can see that practically. So that was just my comment, that we should not be so much engrossed in their following and their so-called bank balances. We should continue our activities to propagate Krishna consciousness as the transparent via medium, Śrīla Prabhupada being present here right now.
Exactly. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, please comment.
I think this is a very important point. Yesterday, I was discussing about the pretty unique and special position of Jayananda Prabhu, and how Śrīla Prabhupada was very pleased to hear that at the time of death, he was hearing the Maha Mantra and was Krishna conscious, and he confirmed that he went back to Godhead. I mean, because the point is, the reason why, because sometimes I hear devotees criticize, well, you should not criticize the other devotees, this is blasphemy. Well, we have to distinguish between what is bona fide and what is not bona fide. What is the proper philosophy and what is the improper application of the philosophy? What is the correct understanding and what is the incorrect understanding? Otherwise, it's very misleading for new people who are approaching Krishna consciousness and they look at all this and it becomes a source of bewilderment instead of becoming a source of inspiration. So that is why sometimes it becomes necessary to point out these differences. We have no interest in fault finding or envious criticism. This is not what it's all about. We are interested in fact finding to ascertain the proper application of Prabhupada's instruction, of Prabhupada's message, and to benefit people. That's why we read from original books. We present the original kirtans of Śrīla Prabhupada. We encourage people to practice in their homes, in their environment, tell their friends, acquire some of Prabhupada's original books and give them to people or preach to them, distribute them. This is the idea of the Krishna consciousness movement. Right now, there's a big change that is happening in the movement as we speak, because a lot of people are realizing that the future of the movement is a Vani incarnation direction. Focus on the teachings and Vani of Śrīla Prabhupada, non-adulterated, unchanged books. This is the future. This Vapu Bhave mentality that has been practiced in ISKCON, this is out the door. It's getting out the door. It is not the future. Our movement was never based on the Vapu of neophytes. Our whole philosophy is that Vani is more important than Vapu. Their approach is that their Vapu is more important than Prabhupada's Vani. We see this every day, the way they present themselves. That's why what we currently have is a manifestation of the 3 Ps. People say, what is that? Posing, posturing, and pretending. We don't need any more of it. We've seen it. We've seen 45 years of it. Now this is the age of the Acharya. He lives forever by his divine instructions and the follower lives with him. From Śrīla Prabhupada's dedication of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 1962 in New Delhi, India. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. And we want to thank our group of Vaishnavas that joined us today. globally at the Prabhupada Disciples Association presentation of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. I want to remind everybody that we have a weekly schedule of classes for the new people that are attending, and we're getting a lot of new attendance. That we have a class every Wednesday evening, which is Chaitanya Charitamrita. Is a very fantastic reading and discussion as well. Lively, like today's lively discussion, very engaging and transcendentally satisfying to hear the truth. I know we're getting a very good response from the people that are attending the classes, that they're becoming enlivened and motivated to chant their rounds and follow the principles and preach Krishna consciousness to other people the best way that they can. You know, we're not trying to push anybody except back home, back to Godhead. And if people misunderstand that, that's their mental speculation. So the class on Wednesday starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next Saturday, we have Bhagavad Gita class. We're progressing. We're in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And again, more enlightening information. And then Sunday here, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class. So 3 classes a week, along with your rounds and eating and honoring prasadam and preaching to others about the Vani incarnation of Śrīla Prabhupada as the means to go back to Godhead, back home to the spiritual world. This is our process that we're promoting. And again, we want to thank everyone in this class who comes on a regular basis to be a part of it, for your participation. It's much better when we have a group of devotees together that are relishing the Vani incarnation of Śrīla Prabhupada together. Guru, Shastra, Sadhu. All glories to the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, and all glories to the disciples of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Vinkat, could you bring on the kirtan for us? And everybody, please chant along.
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur-Bhakta-vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur-Bhakta-vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur-Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama. Prabhus, let us offer our respectful obeisances to each other and send our blessings to each other that we can carry on with this mission of preserving Prabhupada's legacy into the future. Vanchakalpa, Tarubhyascha,
Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanibhyo, Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Grazie, grazie.
Prego.
Merci à Prakrita. Merci à Prakrita.
Prakrita, this